Greetings and salutations, everyone, and welcome to the Mel Blackwell Experience on this September 9th, the year of our Lord 2025. Got a great podcast today. I want to get started with Kevin O'Leary talking about Steve Jobs, comparing him to Elon Musk, and signal versus noise.
I used to work for Steve Jobs in the early 90s, making all of his educational software. And by the way, not a nice guy. Not a nice guy. He would say to a room full of people, Kevin, I don't give a shit what the students want or the parents think or anybody thinks. It's what I want. They don't know what they want till I tell them what they want. And I said, Steve, you sound like such an asshole. You have no idea what that sounds like. He says, no. That's how it is, Kevin. Now, are you making money with me? Am I your fastest growing OEM? Have we not been wildly successful and continue to be? I said, yes, Steve, that's true. He said, then shut up and do what I say. There's a concept that he understood that very few people focused on back then in the early 90s of signal-to-noise ratio. What was so brilliant about Jobs, his vision of signal was the top 3 to 5 things you have to get done in the next 18 hours. Not your vision for the business next week or next month or next year, just the next 18 hours you're awake. You're going to get those 3 things or those 5 things done that you have deemed critical for your mission. They must get done today. Anything that stops you from doing that is the noise. So this signal-to-noise ratio to be successful for Steve Jobs was 80-20. 80 signal, 20 noise. And I knew that to be true with him because he would email me at 2:30 in the morning, expect me to get back to him, because back then we didn't have texts. It was all email. He was right. He was right. And the only other person that I've seen that has a higher ratio than that is Elon Musk. He has no noise. He does not deal with noise. He is 100% signal, 24 seconds, every cycle. I mean, the guy is just 60 seconds of every minute, 60 minutes of every hour. The 18 hours he's awake, it's all signal.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Little different. We've all heard of the 80-20 rule, right? Where you try to focus on the 20% of tasks that deliver 80% of the results. Kevin O'Leary spinning that around and saying that from a signal to noise standpoint, try to focus 80% of your time on signal, not noise. He then he defines that even further and this was a video. It actually shows, like, let's say there's a bucket with 10 or 12 things in it. And he was saying that Steve Jobs knew how to focus on those 2 or 3 things in that bucket and just push the rest aside. So what we're talking about here in life and in business is prioritizing. One of the biggest distractions you have from priorities is distractions. So that noise, if you imagine you're trying to focus on watching something on television, there's this loud noise in the background. So in our brains, we do in business and in life, we have to learn to be able to the noise is there, but you have to turn it off. And that gets really difficult with so many electronic distractions now. Like, imagine back when I went to work out of college, you had a cell phone, but you couldn't afford to use the dang thing. But then you had a pager. And if you gave your pager number out to too many people, they'd be buzzing you all the time. And so life's always been about being able to focus and not get distracted, but we're living in a world of distraction. The other type of noise that you could have is falsehoods, false information, inaccurate information, incorrect data, false positive, false negatives. These are things that make it very difficult to make decisions because they confuse you. They confuse me. They confuse us. And so I thought this was fascinating for our podcast today. We want to focus today on signal, not noise, more in that Kevin O'Leary model of Steve Jobs and Elon Musk, where he says Steve Jobs was 80-20, 80% signal, and then maybe there's 20% noise in his life. And he says Elon Musk, from Kevin O'Leary's perspective, is literally 100% signal every waking hour of his day. And so I don't know how healthy a person that makes, and I'm not sure that I'm not advocating being like Steve Jobs or Elon Musk, because I'm not sure that the average person can even aspire to do what they did, right? But we can learn from their best practice, and being a best practice guy, that's what I want to focus here. So for a few minutes, we'll do business. And then I have to be honest, this has been a tough week to try to watch all of the media things on, what are biased media sources? They all are. And then trying to look into, okay, where are my reliable sources of news and data out there in the world? And then there's just a lot of trying to figure out what's important, because the news cycle doesn't always focus on what is important. It buries things, it distorts things, it has a narrative, and depending on which channel or which publication or which rag you're reading, it's skewed. And so that's where I'm focusing today in business, and then we'll look more at just politics in general. But in business, that is very important. In your business, as a leader, as an executive, or you at home, or you in your life raising kids or whatever, signal to noise is real important. So one of the things we do in the entrepreneurial operating system is you do focus on, say, a 90-minute meeting that occurs same time, same place every week at every different level of the business, right? So we won't go into that in depth, but there's a lot out there that you can read on that. And but during those meetings, you have a signal to noise barometer with the way those meetings are run, because you list issues as they're brought up, but you do not tackle them. You parking lot them. If you're not familiar with a parking lot, just imagine a whiteboard. You're in a room of people, you're trying to collaborate, and somebody says, hey, I've got this issue. We don't just discuss it because they brought it up. It goes on the board. It's listed very simply as an issue. And then when you get to the IDS part of the meeting, which is 1 hour of every 90-minute meeting, is spent solving problems using identify and discuss and solve. IDS. IDS is nothing more than start by prioritizing to try to get signal and not spend time on noise. Then you prioritize amongst the signals, what are the most important signals up there? So if there's 15 issues brought up, some you collected during the week, some you gathered during the first 30 minutes of the meeting, looking at reports, hey, there's an issue here, it's written up there, it's not discussed. Hey guys, what are the top 3 issues we want to tackle in this next hour of IDS? When we finish them, we'll pick 3 more, and we'll roll until we run out of time, and then we break the meeting, we meet again next week. So in that is a very practical, methodical way of being able to determine what is signal, what is noise, and then of your signals, what are the most important ones, and that there's usually a time element on those, meaning I may have an issue that's of supreme importance that's not going to be dealt with this week. So it stays on the parking lot. It might be the most important issue up there, but it's just not something we can get to. Remember what we talk about, what and then how and then when. That's kind of the process your mind's in when you're prioritizing. You're just like, what up there on that board represents what we can take a bite out of this elephant this week. We'll have 52 bites this year. And this is one of the 52 bites. And so we look up there and we say, we've got quarterly goals, we have annual goals, and we say, what are the issues? Okay, hey, that to me, that looks, and most of the time in those meetings, it's not a democracy. I've seen it done both ways, where a very senior team that gets along, doesn't have a lot of headbutting, you can turn it over to the team and say, hey guys, pick what you think are the top 3 issues. But you can spend 15 minutes arguing with a out of sync team on what are the top 3. So in a lot of instances, if I'm the integrator, if I'm running that meeting, I'll pick the 3. And then if we tackle those 3 and the rest don't matter that much, I might turn that over to the team. But anyway, bottom line is somebody quickly says, let's address these 3. And then you go into the signal, not noise process. So how that transforms your business is that happens in the senior meeting, that happens in the mid-level management meetings, and that happens all the way down to the concrete for every department's having those type meetings. And you want people to be able to separate signal from noise. You want them to be able to attach what they did that hour and a half in their meeting to the goals of the business, to the vision of the business, to the numbers they were already given. It's important in a business. One of the ways you tackle noise is everybody in your business has a number. And what I mean by that is they have a goal and they understand their goal and they see how their goal fits into the bigger picture, and they know that if the company's trying to, say, achieve $1 million in net profit this year, then they feel like even if they're not collecting or driving revenue, if they're not dealing with driving down costs or running, complex part of the businesses, they realize that in their role, what they do is going to positively impact the goals of the business. And so you want to teach people in your business how to focus on priorities and put aside noise. The other thing on noise is when I talked about drive-by meetings, that was why. That's noise. A drive-by meeting is people are trying to focus. They're walking down the hall. They're coming in from lunch. They're going out to lunch. They're going for a walk. Maybe they look like they're not working, but they may just be thinking, And so the interrupting people on the premise that, hey, I can talk to you at any time because you walked by me is not a best practice. And so think about that in your business. How do I help my team run meetings and have goals already and have the team set up so that they know how to separate signal from noise, know how to prioritize signal to the most important signal. They know how to set goals and assign to-dos on those finite things we agreed to do. You break the meeting at 90 minutes and everybody works their butt off. When you get back together the next week, you got a whole nother set of issues. And so anyway, I hope that's helpful. As we look at what's going on in the world today, I have to tell you guys, I am so concerned about how many people in this country are just utterly tricked by noise, who don't even know how to get signal. They don't know what news source to get to be able to know what's really going on. You have entire Western governments that are up to chicanery. And then you have this whole issue of safety, where I don't think, like I had said last week, the right next to Satan in Dante's Inferno was the deception and being hoodwinked, deceived, betrayed. Those are really evil things. And when you have a government that's doing that to you, they're hiding data, they're not telling you the truth, they don't want you to focus on, hey, so-and-so was murdered, let's look the other way. And then somebody else is murdered, and let's riot and burn every city. I mean, you have to ask yourself, these are evil things. These are deceptive things. These are very bad things. And so I looked at this, I was just thinking about, okay, I wonder what the gun access today versus the Wild Wild West. So if you look back to the 1790s in America, people would say, well, yeah, they had more guns back then because things were more dangerous. Were they? So historically, the analysis I've looked at suggests that 50 to 70% of colonial households possessed at least one firearm. And people would say, yeah, that was for hunting. But no, it was for hunting. It was protecting against Native American conflicts, frontier survival. I mean, it was rough times back then, right? And you had interstate issues that the government had no solutions for. You had inter-county issues. I mean, it was the Wild West back then. Guns were very expensive. They were handcrafted, and but still, you had 50 to 70% of households. So, as you get to the 1970s America, household ownership rates hovered between 37 to 47%. So that's less. So 50 to 70% back in the founding times, to the 1970s, 37 to 47%. And then you also look at, okay, well, knives. Knives have always had historic parallels in how dangerous they are, particularly the Bowie knife and those kind of things. And so when you talk about signal and noise and people talk about all this silly stuff, I mean, homicide rates in a typical frontier town averaged 1 to 5 per 100,000. Okay. Today, compared to today in urban environments, that's 5 to 20 per 100,000. That's 4 times greater today than in typical frontier towns. Now, that doesn't include Dodge City, because that was where they all went out there to see who's the biggest badass. But Dodge City had a rate of 50 to 100 per 100,000 in its peak years of lawlessness and alcohol-fueled, gunfights and stuff. But that's fascinating, right? So just looking at the typical frontier town, average 1 to 5 out of 100,000 homicides versus an urban town in America today, 5 to 20, 4 times greater. That's wild. So when do you think guns were more necessary? The people in the American founding, you had 5 to 7 out of 10 households possessed at least one gun, probably multiple guns, multiple kinds, probably a pistol and a hunting rifle and whatever else they could to protect themselves. But it was actually safer back then, to the tune of 4 times more dangerous now in an urban environment. So I thought that was very interesting. That's signal, not noise. So what I want to focus on now, and I hope you find it useful, let's listen to Charlie Kirk. It's a quick snippet where he's speaking, and I think it makes a lot of sense for America, especially as we look at the signal, not the noise. What's really going on in Europe, what's really going on in the Western civilizations of Europe. They're being utterly overrun, overtaken, and their governments are turning on the native-born, the native blood, the native populations of those countries, and they fought for centuries over there with each other to kind of keep their nationalism. They didn't want to blur into just one big blob and just let, they've literally, there's cemeteries and war heroes and statues, and that's why they want to get rid of that stuff. But this is fascinating. Check out Charlie Kirk.
The spiritual battle is coming to the West, and the enemies are wokeism or Marxism combining with Islamism to go after what we call the American way of life. And the American way of life is very simple. I want to be able to get married, buy a home, have kids, allow them to ride their bike till the sun goes down, send them to a good school, have a low-crime neighborhood, not to have my kid be taught the lesbian, gay, transgender garbage in their school, while also not having them have to hear the Muslim call to prayer 5 times a day. That's important. We want the American way of life, which is, by the way, Christendom. Christians, our sacrifice, our toil, our vision, the outgrowth of the scriptures gave us Western civilization. And this is where I think is a great rallying cry. Doesn't matter if you're Hispanic, doesn't matter if you're Asian, doesn't matter if you're black or white. Everybody, if you are Christian and Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior, these 2 threats are combining forces to come after us. And it's time that the church stands and rises up against it.
Yep. That's right. Well, I couldn't agree with him anymore. I hope you do too. It is a threat. You have to see a threat. That's signal, not noise. And we need to get better about being able to look at history. We'll talk today a little bit later about education, because some numbers have come out that are just absolutely horrible on, as they always are, decade after decade, it gets worse. Kids are in school at the junior high, the high school level, the reading proficiency, math, science is horrible. It's absolutely horrible. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk a little bit about these crimes. The Iryna Zarutska is horrible. I was looking at that 2 weeks ago. It wasn't even being talked about by conservatives. I just was like, this is horrible. Why is nobody reporting on this? And then all of a sudden it caught on fire late last week. And I'm glad it did because it needs to be addressed. But we'll talk about that. But before we do, what is behind the erosion of Judeo-Christian values? What changed in America to where a lot of things changed? But what is one of the things that changed that would allow people to just be so despised and mistreated? And we're just like freaking rats. We have people in our government. I said it last week. People either love humanity or they hate it. They either love people or they hate people. They see people as in the way they were replaced them with robots. They tried to turn America into a consumer nation. They didn't care if we made anything. They didn't care if you had money in the middle class. What signaled to the elites is the stock market and their parties and how much money they have and all of the deals they're cutting and NGOs. I mean, that's their signal. That is a threat to you. That is like the sound of a tornado alarm for you. But that is not where we live. And so listen to this guy. This guy could have been the vice president of the United States. I mean, it's really scary to think how close that he came to that. But this is Tim Cain, and then we'll talk about it.
The notion that rights don't come from laws and don't come from the government but come from the Creator. That's what the Iranian government believes. So the statement that our rights do not come from our laws or our governments is extremely troubling.
So Senator Cain said in this hearing that he found it a radical and dangerous notion that you would say our rights came from God and not from government. I just walked into the hearing as he was saying that, and I almost fell out of my chair. Because that radical and dangerous notion, in his words, is literally the founding principle upon which the United States of America was created. And if you do not believe me, and you made reference to this, Mr. Barnes, then you can believe perhaps the most prominent Virginian to ever serve, Thomas Jefferson, who wrote in the Declaration of Independence, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator, not by government, not by the Democratic National Committee, but by God."
Man. Listen, guys, that's about as strong a signal as you're going to hear. And it got a little bit of play for all the wrong reasons. But listen, you have people in this government, you have people in the West, you have people in Europe who absolutely abhor the fact that you think you get your rights from anybody but them. And that is the scariest thing. That's tyranny. It really is. And so while you have an entire media out there accusing MAGA and, traditional blue-collar Americans, kind of don't tread on me Americans. Hey, man, I pay my taxes. I sure do wish my roads were fixed. I wish my schools didn't suck. I wish I didn't. I wish I had more money out of my paycheck. Wow, things sure are expensive, Americans. Well, they don't care about you. They don't care about you. And the reason they don't care about you is they don't even think you have rights. They get their rights from themselves, and you get your rights from them. That's Tim Cain. Turd Cain. I can't believe that he would say, but he says it like the snake devil people that they are. Because if you listen to that, you go, yeah. Well, he did say that people in Iran, they think their God's telling them to blow up Christians and whatever. It's like, yeah, okay. So let's dissect that from dumbass here real quick. Either God made man or man made God. I've always said that as a way to start a conversation. And it's a short conversation with me. If somebody doesn't believe that God made man, that there's one God and He made man, then we're not going to get very far. I don't really want to spend my time trying to convince them any differently. But because if man made God, then there is no God. There's one God for every man. Maybe there could be 10 gods for every man. If man made God, then there's many gods with a little g gods. And so therefore, the Iranian people's God, well, he tells them to do this. And then the Egyptians people's God, he tells them to do that. And then, the Chinese people's God tells them to do this. So they just sweep God away. And that's one of the devil's greatest practices, is just to convince you that, God schmod. And so in one fell swoop, Turd Cain just wiped away our Constitution, and now you can rest easy at night knowing that you get your rights from Tim Cain and his ilk. Unbelievable. So you say, well, how could this happen? Well, now let's talk about Iryna Zarutska. I saw this. I mentioned it to Gwen. It happened over 2 weeks ago. I think it was 14 or 15 days ago. And I found it the day it happened. And I was I didn't see the video yet, but I saw a picture of her. I saw the picture of the supposed person that killed her, and it's just the whole story. And it made my heart sink, because I've got 3 daughters. I've got a son. I have a wife. I've got me. I don't want to get killed on a subway. And just then when the still pictures came out, and then the video, it's just horrific. But let's go through this story, because it has got so much signal in it. And I hope that you will slow down during this podcast. And trust me, I'm going to play some things, and we're going to focus on some things that I hope will get you focused on signal and not noise.
Iryna Zarutska boarded a train at 10 o'clock at night in Charlotte, but she never made it home. She left in a body bag. Iryna fled Ukraine in 2022 when Putin started bombing, but she died in North Carolina, riding public transportation. Here was the president just this morning. Here was the president just this morning.
I just give my love and hope to the family of the young woman who was stabbed this morning or last night in Charlotte by a madman, a lunatic. Just got up and started. It's right on the tape. Not really watchable because it's so horrible, but just viciously stabbed. She's just sitting there. So they're evil people. We have to be able to handle that. If we don't handle that, we don't have a country.
What kind of monster stabs a woman to death? His name's DeCarlos Brown, 35 years old. He's homeless, and he's been arrested 14 other times. Felony larceny, robbery with a dangerous weapon, assault, shoplifting, public threats. He was sentenced to 7 years for armed robbery. And when he was out on parole, he was arrested for beating up his own sister. But he was never sent back to prison. Earlier this year, he got in more trouble, this time for faking 911 calls. But the judge released him on no cash bail. He was placed on psychiatric monitoring since he'd been diagnosed as a schizophrenic, but obviously he wasn't monitored. This should be a national story, but it's not. A beautiful, innocent Ukrainian refugee was murdered in cold blood in an American city. And the mainstream media has been silent. We're accepting refugees like Iryna because they'll be killed if they stay in Ukraine. The Democrat mayor of Charlotte says we should show the killer compassion. Tragic incidents like these should force us to look at what we are doing across our community to address root causes. We will never arrest our way out of issues such as homelessness and mental health. Root causes is what you say to make yourself look deep, but really it's just a dodge, like Kamala the borders are. After the Charlotte City Council held a meeting on the murder, they ate cake. Mayor Lyles stopped the proceedings and threw a birthday party for a member of the city council. The governor, Josh Stein, waited until today to say Iryna's name, 2 weeks after she got stabbed to death. But when he was attorney general and George Floyd died, he started a task force.
The Task Force for Racial Equity and Criminal Justice will consider and implement measures that can bring about meaningful change to the criminal justice system.
You know what that task force did? It reimagined policing and created alternatives to arrests and, of course, eliminated cash bail for a whole host of crimes. They even hired a DEI consultant to make sure black convicts don't serve too much time. Now, a white woman gets slashed to death by a schizophrenic black ex-con, and the media is blaming the cameras. Quote, the video is easily shared or leaked and can instantly pollinate across social media, a visual counterpoint to statistics showing crime decreases. Ah, yeah, the video of a murder is making it harder for them to convince you crime's down. Brian Stelter says it's racist to share the video.
It's being used, as you said, Brianna, as a political symbol, with MAGA media calling for more forceful punishments and more incarceration. I have to say, some of the replies to Musk, some of the comments around this story are baldly racist, stoking fear of African Americans because this man attacked a white woman. The open racism on sites like X today, it's eye-popping.
CNN not reporting the story is actually what's racist. This isn't just a one-off. In Philly over the weekend, a woman was just executed in broad daylight, just blocks from the Liberty Bell. But the media would rather wage a war on Trump than a war on crime.
That's fake news. When you say that, darling, that's fake news.
Well, why would you the Department of Defense?
Listen, be quiet. Listen. You don't listen. You never listen. That's why you're second rate. We're not going to war. We're going to clean up our cities. We're going to clean them up so they don't kill 5 people every weekend. That's not war. That's common sense.
Well, so look, there's a lot out there. I know Caroline Leavitt lit up the media today, so you'll be seeing that. But the big issue here is if you've watched the media reporting, it's just unbelievable. The Axios comes out and you know, the New York Times finally, I mean, as of like going into this week, going into the weekend, coming out of the news cycle over the weekend, even this morning, nobody was reporting on this. No CNN, no New York Times, no Washington Post. It was unbelievable. I mean, it's 2 weeks. It happened 2 weeks ago, and it's so horrifying. And then you have the people in and around the governor of North Carolina. You know, you have the mayor of Charlotte, and they're They're a bunch of namby-pamby idiots. I mean, I don't understand if they just hate humanity so much or if they're just nincompoops. But either way, your safety is in the balance. And so this innocent young girl gets on a subway. It just breaks your heart to watch it. Sits down, and this absolute lunatic who should not be out on the street. He shouldn't be he shouldn't be at home with his mom or anybody else because he could kill them. He doesn't need to be in a neighborhood. He could kill them. He doesn't need to be walking the streets. He could kill people. He doesn't need to be just riding around on the subways talking to himself with a knife in his pocket. I mean, it's insane. And so what gets me is people fall for the same narrative where they're like, well, it's just we have a mental health crisis. And it's like, of course we do, but even so, why? Remember when you want to get to this signal, it's like, why? Well, it's just, the system failed him. Why? How? Well, he struggled his whole life. Well, for how long? How many arrests does he have? Well, let's see. I think there's 14. Okay, so when was the last time he got out? What kind of things did he get arrested for? Why? And you say to yourself, there is no excuse on God's green earth for cashless bail for these kind of people. These people, you either love society and you love people and you want to protect people from those that would harm them, like this guy. And there's a bunch of them, white people, green people, yellow people. It really doesn't matter. If a lot of them turn out to be black, it is what it is. If a lot of them turn out to be white, it is what it is. If a lot of them turn out to be trans, it is what it is. Those aren't the points until you get to the part that says, well, we won't do what we should with that person because they're a certain color. Wait, whoa, why does that matter? Crazy criminal goes away from society. Put them away from where they can hurt law-abiding citizens. That's the priority. One murder's too much. One rape is too much. Okay? One violent crime is too much. That's the signal. The noise is, well, I mean, it's just, it's really, the crime's going down. I'd be like, okay, well, how would you like to be one of the, 25 people shot in Chicago this weekend and then have somebody get up on TV and talk like everything's fine? They don't care about those people. They don't care about the South Side in Chicago. Most of those people are black. Most of them are at least minority. They don't care about those people. They never have, and they live over there, and they let them shoot each other up. They flood the place with drugs. The police won't even go in there after dark. They send the ambulances and the cops in, once the sun comes up. I mean, is that okay, people? Is that okay? Is that our standard? No. One murder in the South Side of Chicago is too much. Those citizens matter. And get the bad guys out of the neighborhoods. Get them off the streets. Get them away from innocent people. And there can be many, my what, how, when. So the what is get them away from people that they could harm, including their own families. The people that are in their communities, the very people that look just like them, their relatives. Get them away from them so they don't hurt them. Put them somewhere. Okay, how? I don't know. Figure it out. I mean, our prisons aren't, so they shut down all the mental institutions, so open up more of those, and I don't care how nice they are. Get these people off the streets. So Stephen Miller, as usual, goes on a quick tear, so check him out.
The Democrat Party, Sean, is terrorizing the American people. Just think about what is happening in our major cities, the bloodbaths every single weekend. One victim after another, one shooting after another, one murder after another. When you have Democrat politicians like Pritzker and Newsom that are freeing illegal alien pedophiles, illegal alien child abductors, illegal alien murderers back into our streets, to kidnap people, to beat them senseless, to stab them and shoot them to death. This is terrorism being waged against the American people. And then you look at that video that chills our very souls out of Charlotte, that beautiful young woman stabbed to death, murdered savagely on a subway, just trying to get home from work, fleeing war, only to run into a Democrat war zone here in our country. That monster, 14 prior arrests in and out. The Democrat policies of catch and release for barbarians and savages is truly an act of terror, Sean, against the American people. It cannot be explained unless you deeply, fundamentally hate America.
That's right. He's hitting on my point. They hate humanity. They hate America. But this is happening in the entire West. And so we're going to talk a little bit about Europe, and trust me, it matters. This is signal. It's not noise. What's happening in Europe was brought to Europe at the same time that it was brought to America. The difference is Americans respond differently. We have a different constitution. We hold our government to a higher standard. We are the benefactor of being a Judeo-Christian founded country. And when you got Turd Cain over there who's trying to take your rights, that you didn't get your rights from God, you got them from him and whoever is running that swamp up there. That's those elites are making a global play. It's not just America. So remember all the early podcasts we talked with Mike Benz. Mike Benz was talking about USAID, which is named, isn't that interesting? They name it USAID. Everybody goes, well, I think it's really important that the United States provide aid. We're a rich country. It isn't aid. So it's USAID. It's a money laundering scheme, anti-American, anti-sovereign money laundering scheme. But everything that happened, and we're going to get into some of the types of things that have happened. And I want you to be irritated at the end of this podcast, not to be irritated in a way that you're to take it out on your loved ones or do anything wrong, but you need to be edgy. You need, when you have that sense, it's like the old timers. The old timers could kind of go outside and say, there's a storm a-coming. Let's batten down the hatches. Something's going on. I mean, we don't have any spidey senses anymore. We're just like a boiling frog. People say boiling frog, boiling frog, boiling frog. It gets trite. Why is a boiling frog an issue? Because it's desensitized. You warm the water up just enough that when it gets so hot that the frog should jump out, he's desensitized to the heat. His brain doesn't interpret, hey, I'm boiling. Well, that's where we are, man. That's where we are. And so check out Tommy Robinson. I don't know if you follow him. He's outstanding. He's been in prison in the UK. He stood up against the rape community, that just trying to report as a journalist. He is a journalist. He has been anti-government, anti-establishment only because they have turned their back on the national citizens, generally the white people of the UK, and particularly the little girls. They've let them be raped and mistreated for many years, and it's heartbreaking. But let's listen to what he has to say.
Already should have been a revolution in this country over the rape and prostitution, torture and murder of our daughters in every town and city. Not just the fact that the Islamic gangs done it, the fact that they knew about it.
They covered it up.
The police forces knew about it. They all let it happen. And they say it out loud. They let a generation of our daughters be kidnapped and raped, and they did not care. We are seen by them as cattle, yeah? And they do not fear us. And when we fear them, that's tyranny. When they fear us, that's democracy. Yeah? And we need to, I said, we've sat back. We need to get organised. We need to unite this nation. All we're hearing about is the Muslim vote, the Muslim vote. Well, the Muslims make up 7% of the UK. Yeah? We are a majority. We have had enough of mass immigration. No one's asked us, did we want 1 million people imported last year? No one asked us if we want to continually go into war. No one asked us. That's not democracy. No one's asking us the key decisions. Yeah? The key decisions that are affecting us all.
See, and that's what Turd Cain, he should just go over to the UK where they're already ahead of him. See, they don't, the England, the UK doesn't have our Constitution. Their government doesn't see that their citizens get their rights from God. They get their rights from the government. So the government decides white people are just really bad and we've done some horrible things. So we need to basically flood our country with Muslims from all over the world. Well, that is not going to end well. It's not going to end well. I mean, there'll be no UK citizens left, but they're mistreating the children over there, and it is heartbreaking. And I don't know if you're able to do some research. I mean, it's fascinating. I'll say this real quick. Like, using AI is just like being able to go to a library. This generation has some educational issues. I don't even know if they know how to use AI appropriately. If you just say to AI, hey, tell me how to think, AI just does like a Google and it gives you a 50-50 skewed, liberal answer. If you say to AI, support my thesis that the following is true and here's documentation, go find other documentation, AI will do some kick-butt research for you. But example being, right here from the UK, this is from the Daily Mail, grooming gangs commit nearly 2 child sex abuse offenses every day, police figures reveal. 2 child sex abuse offenses every day against little white UK girls. Now, Tommy Robinson got sideways with the government, the police, and everything. I don't know if you guys noticed that American comedian that got on a plane, flew over there, and they locked him up because he said 3 mean tweets. And it's like, you've got to be kidding, right? And all the while, the same thing that's happening in America is happening over there. They deny that the crime even existed, and therefore the offender doesn't even get arrested. That happens a lot. So you go down and say, I had a rape, and they go, well, no, you didn't. Just go away. Oh, no, Mel. Yes. Okay, so I report the rape, and I go down to the police station, and while I'm at the police station, I'm molested by some of the police officers. Oh, no, Mel, surely not. Yes, I've mentioned it. It's there. Multiple examples of that. Then there's been all these rapes, but we've recategorized them as assaults. The government, the police. So that's they've taken real signal and they've made it noise. They've created lies. They took data that was there to protect citizens and they destroyed it. They hid it. They altered it. We're going to talk about that, how that's happened in America. But here's another here is outrage in Germany after Afghan migrant who was arrested for raping an 11-year-old was released after 12 days. When he then raped another girl, age 13. My heavens. I mean, seriously. So here's some other statistics. So these are rape crime reports. In the year 2000, England had 8,600 rape crime reported. England and Wales. In 2023, the number went up to 68,109. That's almost 60,000 more rape crime reports. Okay? So there were people that were raped and just went home and didn't say anything. There were people that were raped, went to the police, and they just turned them away. So these are the people that got through the crooked reporting. It went from 8,600 in England and Wales in 2000 to in the year 2023, 68,109 rapes reported. Germany, year 2000, 8,133 rape crime reports. 2023, Germany, 39,029 rape reports. It went up 31,000 rapes that were reported. France, 7,500 rape crime reports in the year 2000. 2023, France, 42,400 rape crimes reported. Dude, that went up 35,000 rapes. Then in the year 2000, Poland, 2,399 rape crime reports. Poland in 2023, 1,127. They cut it in more than half. What's different about Poland? I sent this to Gwen. It's fascinating. Poland was devastated after the fall of USSR, right, when it came out. I mean, it was devastated through wars. And it just, they had a choice. They could have rebuilt back like an American, out in the middle of nowhere, strip malls and tear down all. But no, that's not what Poland did. Poland took a shine to, we're going to restore all of our historically beautiful buildings as they were. We're going to restore our city centers. We're going to build back with the same architectural standards. We're going to love our citizenry. So I think I read, and I know I did, that they're sitting close to 99% of their population are Polish. They're very nationalistic. They've held true to the fact that, hey, we're Poland and we love our people and you come visit, come do what you want, but they're Polish. They don't want to be mixed with a bunch of other countries. Nothing wrong with that. But what's the outcome? England and Wales, Germany, France, just multitude more rape crimes reported between 2000 and 23. Poland cut in half. Why? No illegal immigrants. They're big time on their borders. They're serious about trying to enforce crimes against their citizens. Fascinating stuff. And so that's signal, not noise. And I think it's real important. Last point I want to make on that is you understand that what the causation of this, that you can see how Poland's immigration and how they focused on nationalism and Polish pride. They're proud to be Polish, and they seem to have an admiration for their citizens. And then you have the rest of Europe, England, Germany, France, and all these guys. They've just let immigrants pour in. They're letting immigrants just rape and pillage and change laws and open up Sharia law. And they're getting more and more candidates that are coming in that are absolutely 100% have no love for any of the tradition of those countries. And it comes at an exceedingly high price. But listen to this. This is a young lady that lived in London in a nice part of town, and she talks about how scary it was to live there.
I spent the last 3 years living in England as an American, and everyone always asks me if it's as bad as they say, to which my answer is always, it is worse. You have no idea how this affects your day-to-day life, how unsafe I felt living in London. And I lived in West London in Zone 1, which is like about as nice as it gets. And I had my phone stolen multiple times right out of my hand, because what they do is they wear masks and then they'll take their little e-bikes and they'll come and grab your phone out of your hand. And they do it all the time. It's like known. They'll stalk you. They'll follow you. They use intimidation tactics. You're constantly looking over your shoulder. I wouldn't dream of walking home alone at night. I'd always take a cab. You have to constantly live in fear and with the expectation that something bad is going to happen. And it's always at the hands of migrants. And so much of it goes unreported and undocumented that it's like, it is so much worse than people understand. And it affects your life in ways that you don't understand. I really hope that the US learns from this and sees this, because the only way that these people got in are through leftist ideologies, open borders, virtue signaling, DEI initiatives. Keir Starmer himself recently said that the greatest threat to the UK is Islamophobia, not Islam. I mean, he's literally paying for them to come in and rape women and children, to commit crimes at higher rates. It's sickening. It's disgusting. It's a government against its own people. It's created two-tier justice, and this is all through leftist ideologies. And we are so lucky in America that we have an ocean separating us from Europe right now. But if we don't learn from their failures and their fall, which is what's going to happen, their fall, we deserve what's coming for us. And what's coming for us is ugly.
Yep. Like they say, a word to the wise is sufficient. I believe it is here. I believe that flooding our country with thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands, millions of unvetted people that we know came from rough parts of the country, of the world. You add to that our already crazy population of, you know, every group of people, you're going to have some bad seeds. And so I just think it's really scary out there for all of us. Just make sure you keep safety in mind. And we need to demand safety from our government and from our police and from our mayors and when they start talking this crazy stuff, their policies create the danger. That young Ukrainian little girl that got almost her head cut off by that wacko dude who had been in the system 14 different times, and they should have gotten him away so he didn't hurt his family, didn't hurt his neighbors, didn't hurt anybody at his church, didn't hurt anybody in his neighborhood. It starts right there with people that look just like him. He could have hurt anybody that's right there in his influence. He ends up on a subway and he kills this little girl. But the blood is on the hands of the government. The blood is on the hands of that mayor. The blood is on the hands of the governor and all of those people in and around that. And I've read where the Charlotte police, fraternal order police, whatever, is bowing up, but they need to bow up even more, because if that happens, it's not you need more police. So let's listen how stupid this is. Let's let all the criminals out on the street. And then, man, we're going to need a bunch more police. But let's make all the police social workers so they can talk to the crazy person. Do you see how nuts this is? It's insane. Get the crazy people out of population where they cannot hurt anybody. And then how you want to do that and when, how you want to make it, however comfortable you want to make it, however liberal you want to be, bleeding heart, go over there to the institution where those people are kept and figure something out. But get them away from the little girl on the subway so that she doesn't get her head almost cut off by a whack job. So this is another one here. Amidst all of that over in Europe, now they're coming out, and the story is because of in order to control immigration and to make sure that we don't have illegals in Europe, the EU has decided to come out with a digital ID. Wow. First, let's flood the zone with illegals. Let's let illegals just murder on command. Let's deny it's happening. Let's lock up people like Tommy Robinson that report it. You've got, rapes. Can you imagine just rape is such a horrible thing? You've got rapes that are tripling and doubling and quadrupling in all of these Western civilized societies. And then they come out and go, yeah, you know what we need to do? We need to do a digital ID. We need to go full-fledged, tyrant, tyranny. So we're back to COVID times. So what is a digital ID? Digital ID would be it ties your identity to your checking account, to your social credit score. So what's a social credit score? How do you behave according to the turd Cain and the European Union that gives you your rights, not God? So they get in between. They start watching you and they say, Mel, you really don't behave green enough. So they lower my social credit score. So I get higher interest rates at the bank, or I can be debanked. Oh, no, Mel. Yes, that's what this is. It is 1984 George Orwell on steroids. And so you literally have Keir Starmer. You've got Tony Blair advocating it, Emmanuel Macron, who's in trouble over there as far as his, being in power, but he's going for it. They're all going for the, a broader digital ID, and then that, even if you try to log on to social media, there's no more anonymity on social media. So they know you, they know everywhere you are, they know everything you do, they know exactly how you behave according to their matrix of behaviors that you should, and you are penalized if you don't, and you are rewarded if you do. Wow, unbelievable! But check this out on basically the European digital ID.
I propose putting an end to anonymity on social media and force all these platforms to link every user account to an European digital identity wallet.
It is a great anti-corruption tool and a great tool to ensure that democracy delivers.
But it could also be a nightmare. The European Digital Identity Wallet is a hugely influential piece of legislation. We might need this digital identity wallet when we go to the doctor, when we use public transport, when we log into Facebook.
And that means interoperability. That means to put different counties and different administrations working together.
But for users, the main argument for you is about convenience. At the moment, there's too many different logins, too many different systems.
Okay, it's convenient for users, but it's also convenient for the European Union.
Yes, it appears that the United Nations is very keen to introduce a global digital ID system that is linked to individuals' bank accounts.
So the proposal was launched in June 2021. So if you remember, that was still quite close to the COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdowns where everything had to move digital. And Commissioners Breton and Vestager, I think, wanted to ride that wave of COVID a little bit and wanted to propose something that is easier swallowed if people are more eager to do things online.
There are a big difference between Europe and, for instance, China, India, and other competitors, because in these countries, this process captures the identity of citizens. Here, you are giving to the citizens his identity to use as they wish.
Digital ID is basically equals control for governments.
Golly, swirling basket of turds. I think I've called them before. But what's fascinating, signal to noise, signal to noise, signal to noise. Okay, come on, surely everybody out there can hear that is BS. That now some of those people were just reporting the facts, but I mean this whole thing of why you would need a digital ID is 100%. It is a power grab at the top that's going to make COVID look like nothing. So attached to that is going to be your vaccine status. Whether or not that there's any consent whatsoever. So there could be vaccine mandates. You don't get the vaccine, you just can't buy anything. You won't be able to go in public and be able to ride a bus. No, Mel, surely not. Oh yeah. And so what they're doing here is they're now that they flooded the zone with a bunch of illegals that are just ransacking the place over there. They're like, you know what we need? We need to get a digital ID so that we can curb illegal immigration. And that's what they're saying. It's like, you guys did this. It is fascinating to me. The ones that subject you to the torment show up with the remedy. And we should just punch them in the nose, throw them over into a ditch, to say, I never want to see your face again, get out of town. And we should get people that love humanity and that have some semblance of decency in them. These people are absolute smoking turds. All right. Hard not to get irritated at that stuff. So on a similar note, I want to look at Secretary Mann came out. The Reading Proficiency reports have come out on American students. And wow, guys, just listen to what she has to say.
I can tell you that when I look at these scores, and I've made literacy my number one priority during my term as Secretary of Education, because I do believe that if our students cannot read, they're not going to be successful anywhere. And I think the underlying reason that math scores and science scores are down so far is because, first and foremost, reading scores are so low. I think in seniors, 12th grade, if I remember the stat correctly, I think that's the lowest we've seen since the NAEP scores were first done in 2005. And that's just an incredibly devastating trend to look at in our country. So we're spending a ton of money on education. We've spent $3 trillion since the Department of Education was established, only to see scores continuing to decline. And that's just that's a trend we have to stop. And I think the money's not being spent where it needs to be spent, and that's at the states. And that's why the President and I are certainly on a path and a mission to return education to the states.
Yeah. Okay. So listen, so when she's talking about the NAEP scores in a NAEP, where it comes out and it shows what the proficiency is, they do it for math, they do it for science. This particular one was for reading, and it was absolutely horrible. So I did a little research. I hope you'll find this fascinating. So we all know K through 12, 13 years of school. And by research, 13 academic years from age 5 to 18, that would equal 16,020 hours that each of us, a child, spends getting educated. 16,020 hours. Isn't that crazy? So that's 1,232 hours per year that your kid is in a classroom learning. Learning what? What is it we're teaching these children? Okay, they're being taught to. They're obviously not being taught that they get their rights from God. They're not being taught, reading, writing, and arithmetic like we used to get taught. What are they being taught? 16. So they're in there for 1,232 hours this year. What did they learn? So by 6 years of that, right? 6 years of almost 8,000 hours. Can they read? What are they teaching our poor children? It's unbelievable. But that's signal. That's not noise, right? Don't listen to, this or that or this. Like, no. I mean, what do teachers teach? Can they teach? Are there rowdy kids in the classroom that don't? What's going on in our schools? And so in 2024, the results showed that 35% of 12th graders were proficient or above in reading, 32% below basic. So 35% of 12th graders can read at or above proficient levels. Unbelievable. 35, so just say a third. That means 2/3. That's unbelievable. So in 1950, youth aged 15 to 24 had a literacy rate exceeding 97% and a illiteracy under 3%. So can you follow me on that? In 2024, you've got 32% of 12th graders can't even read at the proficient level, which we've lowered the standards over time. Whereas in 1950, 97% could. Only 3% couldn't. Okay? And probably those 3% didn't even go to school. But a lot of folks, like my granddad, didn't finish high school, but he learned so much. I would imagine he's probably better off than these people are today. So in 2024, 22% of 12th graders are proficient or above in math. Only 1 out of 5 12th graders. That's unbelievable. They didn't keep the study back. They didn't keep those numbers back in 1950, but I guarantee it was the same. It was going to be 97+%. So obviously, and I could do more research, but it'd be boring to sit and talk about it. But the bottom line is that our education department, as we've nationalized it, as we've turned it over to the federal government, has turned into a swollen, fat, bloated waste of time, resources, and their effectiveness as teachers, their effectiveness to teach signal, not noise, to be able to get children in a room and help them be able to do reading, writing, arithmetic, social skills, PE, exercise, the whole 9 yards, being able to go to trade schools, all that stuff. We suck. We're world-class horrible. And so how much did it cost getting 97% of kids in 1950 that could read? And I guarantee the reading level was hard. Go back and look at those books. People probably couldn't pass the test now. That was not a nanny state. Okay? So here's what it cost, adjusted for inflation. $2,815 per student is what it cost to educate per kid in 1950. That's $2,025 back in 1950. $2,815. What does it cost now? $17,367 per pupil. We're spending 6.17 times more per pupil today than we did in 1950. In 1950, 97% of them could read, write, and do arithmetic at or above expected levels, and today only a third can. Unbelievable. 6 times more for 33% as good. Unbelievable. And so that's signal. That's not noise. When people want to talk about correcting and fixing the whole NEA or whatever it is, just the education of our children, it is appropriate to push it back to the state. Why? Because you want to get it back closer to the county. You want to get it back closer to the city. You want to push it all the way to the table with the parents involved. So you really want to get that pushed down as far as you can. That's the what. The how and the when, yeah, it's tricky because we've made a mess of things. So there's going to need to be some people help figure that out. But isn't that unbelievable? That is just unbelievable. All right. So let's switch gears a little bit. Still in the same vein, we're signal, not noise today. And this was really important. Last week, RFK Jr. went before Congress and was going on and on about just some of his findings and what he's found. And it was fascinating to me to see who attacked him and how. And, you know, I can't play all of the clips. I mean, I watched most of it, and it was fascinating to me, though, to see how they attacked him and what they said. I mean, these people have sat over the decline of American health. We are fat. We have put poisons in our food. We have poisons in our medicines. We basically, it just makes no sense. You've got big food, big pharma, big medicine, big tech. You got all these big stuff, and Trump and RFK Jr. and his administration are trying to go, and once again, we love humanity. We want to try to, can we get to the bottom of what's making us sick? How do you go from 1 in 10,000 kids to having autism to 1 in 20 or 1 in 15 or 1 in 12? Don't we want to know the answer? So the guys that governed during that process that supposedly were over health, that were oversight, that were supposed to make sure that didn't happen, they're up there beating up the guy that's trying to fix it. It's fascinating. But this is a quick montage of RFK last week, and let's listen to that real quick.
We were lied to about everything. We were lied to about natural immunity. We were lied to about, we were told again and again the vaccines would prevent transmission, they'd prevent infection. It wasn't true. They knew it from the start it wasn't true because that's what the animal studies and the clinical trials showed. We were told that there was science behind cloth masks. The CDC allowed the teachers union to write the order closing our schools, which hurt working people all over the country, and then pretend it was science-based. I mean, I'll just tell you one example, and I could sit here and give you thousands. But in 2002, CDC did an internal study of Atlanta, Fulton County, Georgia children, and looked at children who got the MMR vaccine on time and compared those to kids who got them later. So in other words, kids who got them before 36 months and kids who got them afterward. The data from that study showed that black boys who got the vaccine on time had a 260% greater chance of getting an autism diagnosis than children who waited. The chief scientist on that, Dr. William Thompson, the senior vaccine safety scientist at CDC, was ordered to come into a room with 4 other co-authors by his boss, Frank DiStefano, who's the head of the immunization safety branch, and ordered to destroy that data. And then they published it without that fact. The vaccine is ineffective for the first 6 weeks after the first shot. I'm assuming a 2-shot, a 2-dose vaccine like Pfizer or Moderna. And that during that period, the COVID infection rate goes up and the death rate goes up. And the data, the official data, do not count you as vaccinated until 2 weeks after the second shot. So the deaths that happen during that first 6 weeks are attributed to unvaccinated people, to the unvaccinated group, it's a trick. It's a statistical trick. Then the vaccine appears to provide immunity, and good immunity during the first month or 2 months, and then a precipitous decline, a waning that happens very, very quickly and very precipitously, so that by the 7th month, it has lapsed into negative efficacy. And what that means is that after 7 months, if you had that vaccine, you are more likely to get COVID than somebody who has never been vaccinated. And this data is holding up across every country in the world.
Wow. So I know that's a tough situation. People vaccinated themselves. They vaccinated their kids. Some people were mandated to do it. And so there's no judgment there. What do you do? What do you do before your government lies to you for a living? And it's crazy to even say that out loud, but think about the signal to noise conversation we've had today. We've talked about, this Ukrainian girl that just gets killed on a subway. It ought to be like everybody ought to be like, okay, that'll be the only murder we have in Charlotte this year. That ought to be the way it is to live in America. With dadgummit, that's one murder's too much. And instead, they buried it. They hid it. There are people, there are little boys and girls, there are moms and dads, there are old people dying in cities all across America, and it's not being reported. Nobody cares. That's a truth. It's going on in Europe. I've shared it with you. You can study it yourself. It's unbelievable. Lives don't matter. We don't get our rights from gods. We get our rights from the people that are letting us get pushed around, murdered, run out of our own towns. And so it's crazy. But let's talk a little bit about what I hope you can listen regardless of whether you're vaccinated or not, because I know it hits hard for some people that wish they might not have gotten vaccinated, or other folks really feel like that it was the right thing. So whatever. Good for everybody, no judgment. But what RFK Jr. is talking about is that specific to autism, and this is going to go on for a lot of other vaccines, that they knew there was a causation between those vaccines, MMR particularly is what he was talking about, and if it was given prior to 36 months. Those kids that got it after 36 months had a significantly lower autism rate. Those that got it prior to 36 months of age had a much higher autism rate. And he was specifically noting black children. Okay, he's saying they destroyed the data. They buried it, and they published they published the article and the not the article, but they published the FDA information without it. That is criminal, guys. That is, they don't care about us. They don't care. And so the other thing he was talking about was just on the reporting. I think this is just very, very corrupt. So here's how our CDC, Fauci and gang, this is how they reported being vaccinated versus not being vaccinated. So let me see if you caught this. So he was saying basically that they defined vaccination status and reported efficacy data during the pandemic by classifying individuals as unvaccinated for the first 14 days after their second mRNA vaccine dose. So what that means is you get your first mRNA shot, okay? They still consider you unvaccinated. You go all the way up until you get your second shot 42 days later. I'm sorry. That's at about 28 days. You get your second shot. Then for 2 weeks more, you're still considered unvaccinated. So 42 days from the first dose of your mRNA shot, you've gotten 2 doses. It's been 42 days. Then they categorize you as vaccinated. Most of the hospitalizations, the negative reactions occurred during that 42 days, and they attributed it to the unvaccinated group. So you can't trust these people. Does everybody understand that? I know I did a horrible job. I was trying to read it and say it at the same time. So basically you have 2 groups, vaccinated and unvaccinated. The unvaccinated includes all those people like me that didn't get vaccinated. So that's accurate. It also includes everybody that got their first shot and their second shot for 14 days after their second shot, which is 42 days after their first shot. So it's been 42 days. You've had 2 mRNA shots. Then you're considered vaccinated. So all of the many of the Bell's palsy and the side effects and horrible reactions, deaths that occurred, they said they were in an unvaccinated group. You're vaccinated the minute they stick that needle in your arm. So just understand the kind of tricks they play, and that is signal, y'all. That is signal, and that brings us to the next one that I think is very important. Listen to what Trump actually posted this clip yesterday on his Truth Social, and I know there was a hearing today, and I have a feeling that this is going to get blown wide open now.
Show them the thimerosal bomb, which we keep in a metal container because we're a little afraid of it, and it's a very fine powder.
This is thimerosal, which is labeled very toxic, has cumulative effects, can cause damage to the kidneys, to the respiratory system, skin, to the nervous system. It specifically warns on here that it can cause reproductive and developmental toxicity, meaning that it can cause things like autism and other neurodevelopmental disorders. This is immensely toxic stuff. And this is what's in the vaccine. It's important to realize we're talking about a whole range of products. Vaccines are a big one because, of course, you're directly injecting it. For example, this is tetanus vaccine. This one expires. It's a little outdated now in 2007. And here's the thimerosal. 1 to 10,000 is a preservative. Perhaps the biggest one in the U.S., at least, that's for exposure to mercury is the influenza vaccine. Influenza vaccine is now recommended for all pregnant women, all infants, all children on a yearly basis. You're supposed to have last year's influenza?
Understand that thimerosal is not added at the end. It's not like, well, that factory next year can make thimerosal free. Thimerosal, you either have to have a thimerosal-free factory or you have to not have one. They add thimerosal at each step because the factory is not clean and not sterile. So you either have to have an expensive sterile factory where you don't need thimerosal, or you have to have one that produces thimerosal. It's going to need thimerosal or something the whole time. It needs to be stopped.
This is the influenza vaccine from Adventist Pasteur, their flu zone. Thimerosal, 25 micrograms of mercury per dose.
I'd like to point out that a lot of people didn't know, and I'm one of them. I've given 2,000 RhoGAM shots. I've been in vaccines for 35 years. I didn't know that RhoGAM had thimerosal in it. So I think a lot of the doctors were unaware. They were unaware that even the word thimerosal meant mercury.
Man, the last part of that is I believe is true. I believe there are a lot of doctors in the way that things are put together now. You have to trust your government. You have to trust that this whole vaccine world. It doesn't take a genius. Master the obvious to me is it's like, okay, well, first thing, let's make sure that vaccine makers are immune from any lawsuits or go into prison or anything for how it might hurt citizenry. Yeah, that's a great idea. It's a horrible idea. So when they did that, I believe that was back in the 80s, this thing just went wild. And so RFK Jr. is not lying to us when he says there's instances. There was a lot more I could have gotten to today on the podcast with clips, but I just didn't want to bore you guys. It just, at some point, it just overload. But there are many, many clips of many reliable researchers and doctors that are saying exactly what these guys were saying about various different vaccines, various different chemicals in there, nanoparticles, things that are not good for the human body. And so the thimerosal is mercury. And, mercury poisoning is real. And so you're talking about influenza, according to these cats, saying that they have really high thimerosal values. And they were giving them to everybody, babies and everybody, just for years and years. Hey, let's run. And you think about, you used to have to go to the doctor to get your vaccine, but now you just go to any drugstore and there they are. Just, you don't have to be a doctor. You just come over and give me a shot. And you just need to step back and see the signal, not the noise. We have been misled. And it didn't start at COVID. When people mistreat you, after a certain amount of mistreatment, they just take for granted you're going to put up with it. And that's what's going on in Europe, and that's what's going on in America. They just think we're going to put up with it. We're too dumb to hear signal. We're going to listen to their noise. We're too dumb to realize that dumb, ignorant, or checked out, or looking at our phones, or doped up, or whatever it is they want us to be, fighting each other, calling each other is, all that's noise. The signal is we've got to regain control of our healthcare system, our education system, and the public safety of this country. We've got to do it. There is no other option. And step one in that is anybody in Charlotte, North Carolina, or any other city where they are, Chicago, we hadn't even talked about Trump trying to go up there and clean up crime. I for one, it makes me very sad that one little white girl from Ukraine that got murdered on that train is so hard because you had a video of it. There were 24 people shot up and multiple people died in the south side of Chicago this weekend, and nobody gives a rat's care. And that's just as sad, just because they're black and just because they're poor and just because they live in a war zone that their city has designated, it doesn't care about them. We've got to get back as citizens to look around. One murder is too much. One rape is too much. What needs to be done? Not how or when, what needs to be done? We need zero murder rates. Trump has pulled that off temporarily in Washington, D.C., because he's got the rats hiding. It's going to take more than just that. But we need to get, every citizen needs to care about the education, the safety, and the integrity. And we need to realize our rights come from God, and that poor person that lives across town, they matter too. And the crazy people that are wandering around the streets don't have a right to be on the streets where they can hurt their family and their friends and their neighbors. They need to be taken off the streets. So let's roll out today with Mike Goodwin. Mike is a really, really funny guy. He's a great Christian comedian. I don't know if you've heard him, but check him out.
There's only two things in life that you worry about, whether you're healthy or whether you're sick. If you're healthy, you ain't got nothing to worry about. But if you're sick, you got two things to worry about. Whether you're going to get better, whether you're going to get worse. You get better, you ain't got nothing to worry about. But if you get worse, you got two things to worry about.
It's true.
Whether you're going to live, whether you're going to die. If you live, you ain't got nothing to worry about. But if you die, you got two things. Whether you're going to heaven, whether you're going to hell. If you go to heaven, you ain't got nothing to worry about. But if you go to hell, you got two things. Original or extra crispy?
Original or extra crispy, that's the truth. All right, I hope you've enjoyed the Mel Blackwell Experience today. And we'll be back same time, same place next week. Until then, focus on the signal, not the noise.